Welcome back to the Scenery Farm. These are some videos I put together so you can see how these parallel risers go together. This is a finished 4x8 riser, and I'm just flopping the lid on here. It's all done. It's got 3 male coffin locks or roto locks and 3 female, in the same pattern as the risers that already exist in that theater. And it's a pretty important thing to make sure that you line those up. Yeah, I'm just fiddling with the lid here, popping it in place by myself, working up top there. It's a little bit of a finagling to get her in there, but that's the final riser. The goal here, I also do one 4x4 riser, 4 foot by 4 foot. And these are the Roto locks. And this is a male one. It uses 5/16 Allen key, and you see how wide it is, and then as it turns, it pulls together, it gets smaller. And then the female one, you can see the difference between the two of them. And it just tightens and locks in place, and lining those up is pretty important, but you can see there's some play in them. You don't have to be dead on, but it's good to try and get it as good as possible. This is how I make the templates. Oops, that piece is in the wrong spot. Move it down, James. There you go. And all I do is I take a blank, a piece of plywood that has nothing cut out of it. I rip a bunch of MDF or whatever. You can see the top one there has a notch in it. All these pieces I put in place. All the rest of them I pinned in, but that wee little foot there I pinned and screwed it in place. And so that's what it looks like. I take a flush trim router, I flip it over, I rough cut the piece, and from the other side I'll use a flush cut router bit. Now these are there are 6 of these per 4x8 riser. I'm just doing these all on my CNC, and cutting all the pieces, and that's going in the background as I'm doing all the other processes. And I'm just stopping it. I'm moving the router head out of the way. I'm going to flip this piece out, unscrew it. I'm using screws because I work that little router quite hard. And once I get all this out of the road, I got to make sure there's no dust build up. You can either use the vacuum that's attached to your CNC or a brush or whatever. You can blow it out of the way. And I just happen to have a brush there, so that's what I'm doing. That's a great shot of my back. That's great thinking there, Jimmy. Looking forward to getting that right. Make sure, oh, look, there you go. You can actually see something again. This is the blank. I have a mark on the cutting surface there. I line it up, I pre-drill and screw it in place. I just double check it aligns to the center, and then I let it go. I don't have to double check it, but it's been wrong before. So the reason I pre-drill and countersink is if I just screw it in, the countersink's not a problem because my screws are pretty good, but the pre-drill, if I don't pre-drill, it puckers the work surface, the cutting surface that I'm lining things on, and with the pre-drill, it avoids that. This is a little router template I did for those pieces once they're cut. I actually started rounding over the corners before I did this because just getting the board in here is a bit of an annoyance. So this is, it just holds it in place. Clamp it to the bench, ye old Bessie clamps, and yeah, once it's clamped in place, make sure things don't move around, and then I get my blanks that I've been cutting out all week and throw them in there. And see, this is why I rounded it over, all the little furry bits on the edges. Flip that in place so it locks in place, and me pressing on it holds it in place. What I have there is a collet that runs up against the template, and I drop down a 1/2 inch top bearing bit, so the bottom of it is just the cutting edge, and I take about a 1/16 of an inch off for the hinges. When I take them off, I line them up side by each because I'm doing a left and a right, and they're in pairs all the time. And so I do my stack so I have the right number side by each. This is Angela working away, and she is marking out the from one of the finished templates, actually that template I showed you earlier, on a blank. She gets a backer board at MDF to avoid blowout. So Angela's drilling the holes. She's got an MDF backer plate on there so there isn't blowout. And when she's done drilling all the corners in those pieces, she moves the MDF backer plate out of the way. Takes the old jigsaw and cuts to within about 1/8 of an inch of the line. Yeah, gets all that done, and then they're ready for routing. I'm just about to use these bits. These are flush trim bits. Bottom bearing flush trim bits is always how I've called them. There's probably a better name for it. And I just changed the bearing on this cutter. And the cutter, I go through a lot of plywood, lots of it, when I'm using these cutters. And this bearing here has been through the wars. And if you turn it, it's crunchy. And that usually means the bearing's about to die. And it often just explodes in the balls if you let it go long. I just put a new one on here. The cutter is still plenty sharp, and you can get these bearings. I found actually when you get cheapy router bits off Amazon, oftentimes they'll send you a bag of these, and yeah, which is pretty handy. So this is a router template for the sides of the parallel risers. I'll show you in a different place in the video how to make them, or one way to make them. I mean, if you have a CNC, you hardly need this. But what I do is on the back, I put little sticks that stay in from the edge. When I'm using this and I'm doing multiple routes on the same template, what happens is a pile of sawdust, especially on the inside, when it's down on the bench, will fill up. And if this is flush against the wood, if this were the top and these pieces weren't here, this would get full of sawdust. So what I have is a sacrificial board that I stick on my bench that I screw into. I do cuts across it all the time, and I'm always doing oddball cuts. And then this is a template that has been screwed to the bench, and it's close enough to the edge so I can use a clamp. Angela was kind enough to make all the rough cuts of the sides of a 4x4 bench, which you'll see in a different part of the video. And once I get it lined up, and I've cut these blanks to 15 1/4, so I shouldn't have to take material from here or the bottom of the feet, but I will have to take material to match the holes that are in these. So I take the clamp and temporarily I will attach it here and here. You can also pin nail them in with like 23 gauge, 21 or 18 gauge nails and peel them up if you don't want to have to move clamps, but this is what I do. I set the depth of the bearing so it is lower than the piece that was rough cut, and the bearing goes to about halfway through the template, and I make sure that the top of the cutter is still available right at the bottom of the bed, because you can actually push these too far down.
Do you want to show them on this side of the wood?
Sorry?
So do you want to show them on this side of the wood?
Oh yeah, so it's like there.
That's kind of dark, but
okay. Yeah, okay. And then I got the template here. corner. I can't actually route to this corner because I have a plant here right now. So what I'll do, again, I can't go all the way over. And I've matched this piece of wood to the router template. I'm going to do an 1/8 inch round over on all the corners to take the edge off all the corners, so it's easier on the hands. And then I could move on to putting the frames together. Thanks. I'm just about to flush trim the sides. I have started nailing the pieces down. I'm using the exact same flush trim setup with the different template. You can see the sawdust building up. When I'm doing a lot of plywood on the Festival router, the dust nozzle that sucks up the dust actually gets blocked by the stringiness of the plywood often, which is why I end up with so much residue. Obviously, wearing a mask for that, that stuff is bad on ye old lungs. I just pry up the nails, have my end cutters there, and I just could quickly pull the nails right through. These ones are 21 gauge, and I just kind of spread them out up and down to make sure I have good coverage. I also make sure I'm not going into the screw holes that way. Which has happened, and whip a new piece on and nail her down, and yeah, make it like all the rest of them. This is about where this video is going to end. I'm going to move on to show you quickly what the flush or the round over, the 1/8 inch round over looks like before this one goes away. And then I'm going to move on to assembling stuff, because this is showing you how to make all of the parts. And here I go again, starting a flush trim. I have a little trim router from Rigid here, and an 1/8 inch round over bit, and all I'm doing is working my way around, taking off the sharp edges. It helps the risers last longer so they won't chip against things, and yeah, it also makes it really nice on the hands. I'm going to give you a close-up of the bit here, and see you next time.